Okay, so I wanted to do a video today. Just give me a second. Right, thinking about what is the point of improvising. So, ow, my nose. So a lot of what I talk about on this channel and a lot of what I play is totally improvised. And I get asked by people, what are you thinking and this sort of thing. So I think first of all, what I wanted to talk about was why it is that I think that you should care about improvising as a guitarist. The thing for me is that since I was a kid, improvising played, I think, a factor in my playing for quite a lot of that. So like, I guess a lot of people, part of what I used to do as a kid involved playing along to records that I was hearing. So Thin Lizzy was a huge part of this. Back then I didn't have access to tabs or anything like that, so I was just listening, hearing and trying to play back what I would hear. And most of this was based around the Live and Dangerous album, as it happens. So I think that is kind of one of the key things that is a big factor to improvising, is being able to play things that you've heard before or in the moment, just heard, and practicing this skill. As the years went on, you do more of this kind of guitar thing and you follow your interest through what happens. This will generally be the case for a lot of people. I think you'll start to listen to other bands and you can follow your interest as it goes along. For me, at some point, I got a lot into shred, and for me, shred kind of was why I started to kind of learn these 3-note per string patterns that are now pretty much the bedrock of how I view the fretboard. So the major scale all over the neck, so whether that's something like F major, I spent hours and hours kind of playing these positions and figuring out what it's like to play the first position of a major scale. And then also, what if you played that same scale but starting from the 4th degree? We could call that B flat Lydian, or we could call that, F major starting from a B flat. What if we played F major starting from our G minor, or the G, you could call that something like G Dorian if you wanted, or for me, I think about that as a F major scale starting from the 2nd degree, the G. So this is another big part of what sits behind like a unconscious-ish level of my playing. The major scale I can sort of view all over the neck because I've done so much of this and it doesn't feel like much. You could also take your pentatonic stuff, and pentatonic came later for me, weirdly, and so I was kind of viewing that also around that major scale. And so, I then started to think that, to me, F major pentatonic is actually just position 2 of the D minor pentatonic. So I quickly kind of stopped thinking about the major and minor pentatonic being a different thing and started to think, actually, these are 5 positions of the major minor pentatonic, and they're all the same thing. So F major, D minor pentatonic, to me, are synonymous. So you get this. And so this is kind of like the little stuff that you can do and improve to kind of get your framework for improvising under your fingers. So then what I think you need to start thinking about is, what is the style of music that you're listening to? What do you like? And once you've got this framework, actually finding this stuff on the guitar is not as difficult as I think it is before the framework. So if I'm trying to think of Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, You know, I'm not having to think too much because I know that the key that I've placed it in is F major, so I'm not having to hunt around. I've only got a choice of roughly like 7 notes to choose from, and oftentimes melodies are going to be fairly close to one another. So once you find the starting point, you can kind of feel your way through a lot of this stuff, and I encourage you to practice doing that, as I think this is a real key that some people don't necessarily hammer home about improvisation, is that I think so much of it is dependent on you being able to play a melody without really thinking about it too much, trying to build some kind of effortless ability to play back what you've heard or what you've heard before. I think that is kind of the unspoken about key to some of this improvisation, where you're not thinking about the interval relationships and all this stuff, you're just thinking about the shape of this melody. And that's what I think is the fun thing for me about improvising, is that it doesn't necessarily matter how the day has gone, because I can find a tune that I want to play, and I can sort of just do a bit of this because I've done it for so long, just playing along vocally with tracks. You know, it's relatively effortless for me in some ways because I've spent so much time on this, if that makes sense. So literally spend time just playing along to records that you really like the sounds of and playing along with the vocal melodies. I think that's where you can get a real sense for melody, as well as being able to build up your skill for hearing melody, playing melody back once you've heard it. So then once you've got these skills, I think this is, to me, the real key about why you should care about improvising at all. And it, for me, is a thing where I can come to the guitar fresh pretty much every day, and it doesn't feel like I'm working on stuff, even though to some regard, if you're doing any of this, I think you are working on musicality, you are working on being able to execute a thing, and you are working on a skill which is actually super useful in real life for whatever reason. You know, if you needed to play a song kind of on the fly, I think this kind of improvisational on the fly skill is where I feel like I'm playing music. Not only that, but you know, you could have a rough day at work and then you come and you play your guitar, and for the time that you're playing your guitar, instead of it having to be this thing where you're thinking super carefully about intervals or scales or anything like that, the framework for the F major scale is sitting there because I've drilled this over the years many times. But when I'm doing this sort of thing, all I'm really thinking about is what key am I in? And I'm thinking about maybe, not even thinking too much about what the diatonic chords underneath are going to be. And then I'm just thinking about trying to place a melody over that. I'm trying to think about kind of playing in time. But what's so fun about it is that every day it's kind of something pretty fresh, to me at least, because I haven't played it before. And I guess the opposite thing of this would be where you've for years been playing the same songs over and over. Maybe you've got like an incredible ability to play the same things again and again consistently night after night. You know, like in professional musician worlds, that would be totally useful. But to be able to improvise, I think for me, as someone who's not necessarily out there known for being a guitarist, you know, I'm just basically a bedroom guitarist, the same as many of us watching. I still think that the improvising keeping me most interested in guitar, and it leads you to other things. You can think about it as composing kind of in real time in a way. You can think about those same things, you know, like what would this sound like if Richie Sambora had played it, or whatever. You know, what would this sound like if a sax played it? You can think about things in these ways, but what's really cool about it is that it's instant and it's coming from nowhere, and over time you actually find you get better at it in a way that is quite gratifying. So I would encourage you that is the point of improvising, I think, of improvising music. It does make writing music, I think, as well. If you're coming up with melodies on the fly every day, then necessarily you will probably be improved as a songwriter if your improvisational skills are also good. I'd imagine that's the case. I don't have any evidence for that though. But yeah, so I'd encourage you, if you're thinking like, how do you get into this improvising thing, or how do I do this? There aren't really, I don't think, courses that are going to start you off on this journey. Just know that it is an everyday kind of thing. It's a long-term thing, but I also, for me personally, it's an incredibly gratifying thing, because every day, no matter what has happened in the day, I can come to the guitar and I can get some joy out of it, because if I'm not feeling like I can play much complicated that day, then I can just play something simple. So that for me is the point of improvising. It's the most fun that you can have on a guitar. It's the thing that you could spend the most time on, a whole lifetime, and you'll find that it takes you in new places pretty much every day. It's a thing which means that you have no time between picking up the instrument and actually executing something. It means that potentially one day you might be able to play something for someone and they might be able to recognize it even, or, you know, it's a thing that can make it so that you can spontaneously play guitar without accompaniment. It's the whole thing, I think. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What is the point of improvising for you? For me, it's basically what guitar has been all about for probably the last kind of 10, 15 years. It's just the most fun I think you can have on a guitar, and that's why I do it every day. Thank you for stopping by. If this was a tool, not a total waste of your time, let me know in the comments. I'm using the Helix pads, F pads. There'll be a link in the description if you want to try these. Cheers.